Hi, good morning to everybody. Those of you who had a slightly earlier start than some of us dressed in suits, well done. When we sat down and we started to plan this as a day, one of the first suggestions that came through that obviously this needs to be focused around the dancers. So I can't think of a much better way of actually starting a conference than getting the dancer's perspective and getting the choreographic perspective as to how does one condition oneself, how does one look after oneself to prevent injuries, to enhance performance. So our first session this morning really is going to be our esteemed panel here talking about a little bit about their background, and then from that we're just going to open it up to the floor. Let's get some questions, let's get some ideas as to how they've achieved what they've achieved from your own perspective as well as from what you hear from the panel up here. And then we'll go through that, and then we're going to lead on to some of the more technical sessions coming from Matt and from Greg a little bit later on. So if I can have your attention for a little bit longer, introduce our panel, and I'm going to let them do that themselves.
Hi, my name is Glenn Wilkinson.
My name is Brian Maloney.
My name is Khyle Eccles.
Hey, what's up? My name is Johannes Hatsolo Hattunen from Helsinki, Finland, former crew training for Warriors. Thank you. A b-boy also, hip-hop head, so that's why.
Okay, so now we're all awake. One of the things that those of you who know me know, my background is obviously not in dance. My background is actually in professional Olympic sports. And certainly from a sporting perspective, complementary training has just always been part of that preparation, part of the work that you've done all the way through. And it certainly surprised me when I first moved across to dance to find that that's not necessarily always the case. So one of the questions I've got to any of the panel here is, at what point did you as a dancer think, I can do something other than dance to help prepare my body for what it is I'm going to be putting it through, and what it is that might enhance my performance, allow me to achieve something that I've not been able to achieve so far? So was there a defining moment? Did you see or do something that thought, do you know what, this is how we should be thinking about it?
Sure. Yeah, sure. It's a good question. I mean, I joined Rhombez School in 1987, and at that time the school was split into two campuses. And for whatever reason, my year of boys was the first boys we went to the other campus, and we were given to a sports science guy, and he put us through rigorous tests, like the Wingate test, for example. Is the first, and we didn't know what we were doing. We got on the bicycles, did our thing, threw up, got off. Came back the next week, we just kept doing our thing, and they gave us very specific exercises to do and very specific things to do. And at the end of it, we all improved massively. And then it disappeared. It got taken off the curriculum. I don't know if it's because it was taking up too much of our time to learn ballet, etc., or whatever we were doing. And then I was lucky enough again, it must have been the mid-2000s, to actually meet Matt Wyan, who's going to speak to you, and Emma Redding, who came to Rhombez Dance Company and did the same kind of thing with us. And again, I worked with them for a long time, and that was when it hit me, about 10 years after I'd actually already done it at Rhombez School, that actually this is a great idea. And I've taken that on into what I do, which maybe I'll talk to you about in a bit.
My introduction into strength and conditioning is very much from the injury perspective. I had a catalog of injuries in my career, which sort of culminated in a complete Lisfranc fracture in my left foot. So the left foot, basically, the arch inverted completely, and 12 screws and 2 wires and 2 plates later, I embarked on my strength and conditioning journey. And it was really the first rehab program that I had done that was measured and structured and very put through progressive load so that I could clearly see and clearly measure my improvement to take me from A to B and to get back on stage, which I did. And again, very much influenced what I do now. I work in the healthcare suite at the Royal Ballet, and my role there includes working and rehabbing dancers with coaching and sort of one-on-one ballet training. I design and implement their strength and conditioning programs, as well as teach company class.
Cool. We did a very quick quite kind of crappy introduction there. Sorry, I just said our name and passed it on. So I'll just backtrack a second so I give a context. So I'm an independent dance artist and a strength and conditioning specialist for dancers. So I kind of have a foot in both things. And I like to think I practice what I preach. So for me, how I got into strength and conditioning is I trained at Rambert alumni, with 2 campuses as well, but I got the new school. It's very nice, it's good. So I toured as a dancer for a long time, worked with different companies. Then I got to the point where I kind of questioned what I was doing as a dancer and go, am I just being a dancer because I'm trained to be a dancer? I'm just going to all the auditions because that's what I'm trained to do. So I took a step back. I stopped dancing and I literally, an advert came on TV and said, have you considered being a personal trainer? And I went, yeah. So, which is brilliant because I went back into education and I loved it. And because of my dance training, I flew through all the kind of anatomy stuff and the movement stuff, which was great. I was then a personal trainer for a bit, thinking I could kind of subsidize that with my dance training, which didn't work because that totally took over and I just became a full-time personal trainer, which I didn't like. And then I went into thinking, well, actually, I want to work with dancers, not with making people musclier or thinner. It wasn't an interest to me. So I started working with dancers more and started questioning, what can I do to help? What is different for us as dancers? And I set up Athletic Artist, which is a dancer training initiative, which focuses primarily on prehabilitation and strength and conditioning. And since I've been doing workshops and different lectures, teaching at different places and learning as I go and talking to people like all the cool people that are here today. So I'm going to be sat where you are in a second, taking loads of pages of notes. It's going to be brilliant. So yeah, I guess I think I've gone on that tangent, but that answers the question roughly, I think.
So yeah, my background is I'm a b-boy. I started dancing '98 and been traveling around the world with this since 2000 and been in many different major competitions throughout the years, winning a lot, losing more. And the reason why I got into strength and conditioning and strength training is because I'm a little bit bigger than most of the b-boys. And I started to see that when I battled, I always seemed to run out of gas in the last battle. And then I met this guy called Martin Rooney, and he said to me, Johannes, you know what? It's okay to be technically worse than your opponent, but it's not okay to run out of gas in a time when it matters. So it took me a couple years to, really think about that, and then I understood, like, okay, like I'm not losing because the other guy's way better or something like this. I'm losing because I'm not doing the work I'm supposed to do. And when I changed that, when I started training more, I started winning more too. So for me, it was primarily because of the battle mentality, also a little bit because of the injuries, but hey, if you want to compete, you need to compete on a level that is in the world right now. So for me, I was blocking myself. I was taking the opportunity to do good in a competition for myself because I didn't want to do the work. So I had to switch my mentality to that. So that's my background.
So with that, do we have any questions coming in from the audience now? Having to think about what's been said so far.
Hi guys, just my question for sorry, what was your name, who works at the Royal Ballet Company? Sorry, Brian. My question is, you say you write the strength and conditioning programs regarding injury rehabilitation. Do you work with a strength and conditioning coach who's working with fit and healthy dancers at the moment? And what's that integration like?
Hello, yeah. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You mentioned that you write the strength and conditioning programs for the injured dancers.
Yeah.
Is there a strength and conditioning coach that you have a relationship with for the fit and healthy dancers, and do you collaborate together on your programming?
We very much collaborate together. So there's 3 of us that work full-time in the gym there, and it's really not sort of isolated. into the injured dancers versus the non-injured dancers. What we end up seeing is more of the injured dancers because, first of all, they have the time to be there, and it's their job to get better as fast as they can, so they end up spending more time in the gym. There are definitely healthy dancers who come and do their programs that have been set up for them to maintain and hopefully progress them a little bit. Their limiting factor there is usually time, because once they're back fully dancing, they're pretty busy rehearsing and performing.
Hi, it's the same question also for Brian Maloney. As you teach company class, I was just wondering if your approach to teaching the company class, if it has been changed, because you teach also, you're in charge of the, the health program.
I think it probably has definitely been influenced, and very much in the aspect of what state they are currently in. So how fatigued are they? What do they have going on the rest of the day? What do they need to be prepared for? So how should different elements be included into class to set them up to do that? And also, probably, I found that I approach class a little bit steadier and very step-by-step and progressive, whereas before I probably would have just gone straight into various ballet steps, but I very much want to get into the process first to then get into the step.
Hello there. It's just a general question for any of you, really, because you've all definitely, no doubt, toured around the world. At a pre-professional level, a student it's relatively easy to implement and integrate a program within their dance training. But when you tour, which can be for weeks on end, how easy is it to modify that supplemental exercise that you do to make sure you stay on track and hit your targets whilst being away with a company?
I made a note which works with that. But I think if we're all here today, we all have a bit of it's our job in a way to make sure you go away from here making sure that strength and conditioning comes away cool and sexy, instead of being like just that extra thing you should do when you've been injured. And it needs to be a thing that as a company dancer, as a freelance dancer, as wherever you are in the industry, that you have your own thing that you can focus on as well. So it's a bit down to education to make sure you know how to break that down. I can only really talk from a freelance dancer perspective, which has very little support and just very little of everything to support the dancers, because they're not big companies with lots of money, there's jobbing that's going from job to job. We don't have time to do our own conditioning programs and the rest of it. But you almost need to make a culture of strength and conditioning to be cool, to be like a cool thing that we all do together. And when that happens, I think it'll start becoming a thing that we can do on tour, we can do when we're moving around, because people will just habitually do it rather than just warming up or just doing a thing. I'm not sure if that answered it properly, but it's a note that I thought was relevant.
Hi. I think it's just it's a state of mind, to be honest with you. You just make the program that you're doing while you're in base, if you like. You make sure that program can be done in a tiny space, basically. And if you've got a mat and a tiny space and the right mentality, it's like warming up for class, it's like warming down, it's like having your cornflakes for breakfast. You just do what you need to do and get on with it. It's the same as turning up for class 15 minutes early. And for me, that was the massive thing that clicked with me. We would tour all over the world, and I would just find somewhere on my own for half an hour to go and do what I needed to do for that day. But it is, to get it into young people's minds, it's sometimes a challenge.
So yeah, for me, it's I struggle with this question a lot in the past, and I'm not in any company. My job is as a dancer is I got an email and they ask, you want to come, and I say yeah, and if I'm injured, I can't do it. So There's my job. For me, it's always come to the what's your job prescription. So your job is to be healthy. Your job is not. Your job is to be able. If you work with a company, if I work with a project, my job is to be able to do the stuff they need me to do. So if I'm spending time injured, if I'm spending my time in a clubs partying, if I'm spending my time eating badly, I'm not doing my job. And then nobody's want to hire me. Then I'm not worth of, people don't want to come and see me. So for me, it always comes to that. What I need to do that I'm able to do my job correctly. It doesn't matter if I'm the best dancer in the world, but if I treat myself poorly, I'm not going to be able to do that performance. So I think that changes a lot around. There's a story about the woodcutter who was like the hardest working man in the world. But every time he went to work, he could cut a little bit less wood. Next day a little bit less, next day a little bit less, next day a little bit less. You know the reason why? Exactly. He didn't sharpen his axe. So for me, taking care of your body, taking care of your mind, eating healthy is to sharpen your axe. That's why when you go to work, you can actually do the work faster and be healthy and be on the stage.
I'll just quickly say I'm lucky to work in a place that everything is in-house, and we generally don't tour. Well, we tour once at the end of the year for 4 to 6 weeks. But just to reiterate what's been said, it's integral that it becomes a cohesive part of what you do, and that you can adjust it and do it anywhere. And that is applicable to any milieu of dance, I think.
So I'll just add one tiny more point, and I've just remembered when we introduced the fitness training into Rombe Dance Company's weekly schedule, actually I did it when I went away, but not everybody did. But actually that fitness training eventually was so good while we were at base, we didn't need to do it when we were on tour because we were working hard enough, but it gave us that platform to actually really get on with what we were doing and come out of it, like you say, like uninjured. Yeah.
I'm mindful that we're going to be running out of time now, so if you've got any more pressing questions, please get your hands up and we'll try to get to those. I've just got one more question while we get to that. Is correct ballet technique is often talked about getting from one position to the other in the most efficient way. Now that's, to an extent, contradictory to what we're trying to do training-wise in introducing an overload so the body is challenged. So as people who have gone both sides of that, how do you manage that situation so that you're making sure that the efficiency of movement that is inherent in dance is still there, but you're creating an overload so that the body creates a change as a result of that stimulus?
I don't actually see it as contradictive at all in terms of moving from one thing to the next in the sort of easiest way possible. If you're trying to press a bar that's on your body and you take your skeleton and down through the biomechanics, like all the way down and all the way up, the way we're designed to move, you have to find a way to do it most efficiently. So under load, you're forced to do that. And it's the same in dance, I think. If you can do that under stress, you can do that with no stress and easier. You can move from one position to the next with greater ease and with greater strength.
Yep. As I said to the people in the class this morning with me doing the floor work conditioning, for me it's about separation, to make sure that we have a specific time set aside to condition. So if we're working on strength or general conditioning, we can take the aesthetic and the performance quality out of that to make sure we have a good fundamental movement patterns that we can easily recall, so then we can add it into our technique, add it into everything else, and layer the stuff back on top again. So it needs to be separate. I don't want to have to be thinking about how to balance on one leg or squat all the way down and up on one leg if I want to add something on top of that as well, such as a performative element. I want to be able to do that comfortably and recall that straight away. So for me, it's a slight separation, finding the time to do it independently for basic movements.
Hi, I wanted to ask the panel, with regard to strength and conditioning, do you see it as really general movements, or do you also use movements which are quite specific to the sport itself to help prepare dancers and athletes for their competition and training?
So I also run a gym in Helsinki called Training for Warriors, and I have 400 students ranging from ex-Olympic athletes to dancers to like people who never did anything. So how I see it is, as for a dancer, as for b-boy, I like to keep my breaking as a little bit as a separate thing, and the conditioning part is a separate thing. I used to mix it a lot, and I used to condition myself with breakdancing moves, but that's only gonna get you tired, and it's gonna make your technique a little bit worse, because when you practice the technique, when you're tired, it's not gonna come out any better. So I like to separate those things. So when I'm training my strength training or my like any physical training, I'd like to keep it really simple with the big compound movements, and then when it's time to do like really sport specific training, I have some variations that I use a little bit of the dance part, and then more of the conditioning part. But the dance part is really easy on that. So I'm not using super technical dance moves to condition myself. I wanna, every time when I dance and do the hard stuff, I wanna be fresh, so I'm curving, I'm doing the technique correct. Before I used to do the hard things after 3 hours of training, and in the end I was hurt all the time. That was the result.
Yeah, it may have changed, and I may be old and not know about these things anymore, but I found it very easy to actually keep those two things absolutely separate. The conditioning was conditioning, and I could either go for it, or I could take it easy, or on a Sunday I could go and do a run where I would try and get my heart rate over 200, which I would try to do once a week. But when it came to the dancing, in my head it was completely artistic. Everything that I was trying to do was to be an artist, not to get my potential up more. That was taken care of all by itself by the exercises and the things that I would do. And actually, it was mentally very easy to turn on and off from those two things, rather than trying to bring all that gym work into the class and then think about this whole other bunch of stuff, or where somebody would tell me about a bone and a muscle while I was trying to do a tonju, and I'd just be like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I found that very easy, and like I say, the science may have moved on a long way since what I used to do.
Thank you. Can I ask you all, we're out of time now, but can I just ask you to show your appreciation? It's not easy sitting up here and actually opening yourself up and talking about what you've experienced. So, entertainers, thank you very much.
So, hey, I know it's an oral panel and we're really conservative here, but please stand up. Come on, come on, come on, come on. We stand up also. On a 3, I want all of your people's energy, because, hey, we're here together, and if we want to have a great day, we can use a little bit of energy, right? You agree? On a 3. 1, 2, 3! You know, that was that little extra that makes ordinary extraordinary. Thank you.